Good morning, Sean here at Mountains Garage. It's bright and early and I'm glad you could join me. Over the last couple days, when I had a minute, I was scraping gaskets and prepping the deck surface on the ZZ383. It's not fun. It has to be done. I typically use your average roll lock. I mean, I've done thousands of things with roll locks. I'm not exaggerating. And I don't remove extra metal, but I know it's a concern. So this time I was looking for something else on my online shopping app from my local parts store, and I bought these. The 3M roll lock bristle disc with the little tits on it. Most of them fly off the outside as soon as you touch something like the dowel for the cylinder head, and they fly right in your face. But other than that, it does a pretty good job. It seems to broadcast the material that's coming off, probably more than a roll lock, it seems, but it worked okay. They're pretty expensive. They're probably $9 a piece compared to a roll lock. You can buy a bag of them for that, depending on what brand you get. The actual Scotch-Brite style. I don't know if I'll buy them again, but I wanted to try them. And I bought two, and I'm so cheap I did the whole job with one. Thrifty, not cheap, thrifty. Now, I would probably never assemble a lot of this stuff without mocking up the engine first, but in this case, I'm putting in parts that are, the only unknown is a camshaft, but it's almost identical to the one that would have come out. So I went ahead and stuck that in. I made this cam bearing handle last summer, just a piece of round stock. I made it M8 on one end for LS engines and 5/16 on the other end for traditional small and big block Chevy. It worked pretty good. Then I put on my new timing cover, the original balancer, and I had enough hardware to reassemble the oil pan. And while it was upside down, I had a couple minutes, I found the motor mounts that I wanted to use, the starter, everything that goes on when it's upside down. It seems strange that I don't even have the heads on yet, and I've already bolted all this stuff on, but I'll get to that in a minute. Everybody has their favorite brand of anything. In this case, oil filters. I've never had a lot of luck with the orange ones. In fact, we call them the orange canisters of death. But, again, in the line of being thrifty, I bought all that, a trailer load of stock car stuff last year, and in that is 3 brand new HP4 racing filters. It looks like an okay filter. I spun one on and took a picture and sent it to my buddy of mine, and he swore he'd bring me something else before he let me use it. I wonder if he'll show up with that today. Well, it's the next day. He came and went, and he didn't bring me a filter. But I spun on this generic black one and put the orange one back in the box for now. You may have noticed I glossed right over the fact that I did not degree the camshaft in. I was committed to using the factory timing components, and while I guess it's possible to manipulate those if you wanted to change the cam timing, in this case, it didn't happen. I bought a new degree wheel last summer and everything, was excited to use it, and I'll use it on the next one, I promise. And the next one after that. We got a couple more engines to do once we get rolling here. So I installed the cam dot to dot, which, as a reminder, is top dead center number 6, not number 1. And then I, as a habit, roll the engine over, 1 turn of the crank, half a turn of the cam, and now I'm on number 1 TDC. And I put the lifters and spider in. Now I'm going to put the light springs in the head so I can check piston to valve clearance and measure for push rods. I had ordered the GM head gaskets that would have been installed in this engine when they built it, and it came packed in this box that hinges in the middle. What do you think those head gaskets look like when I took them out of the box? Yeah, they're going back. Fortunately, I had a set, and I was able to compare them, at least. These are the same gasket sold by Victor Rents. I mean, they are identical, 100%, including the compressed thickness, which is only 28 thousandths, I think, compared to like a blue Falpro, which is 43. So, much thinner. That's what it came with. That's what it's going to get. My buddy is a dealer for Liberty Performance Parts, and he got me these set of heads.
200cc intake runner, 202 valve, ankle plug head. They supposedly have quality valve springs and valves and retainers and such. They look nice. As a casual reminder, it came with the rocker studs, but all your intakes actually go into the intake port. I don't know if you can see it. I could probably put my finger behind it and you can see it, maybe. And the exhaust are blind, so you got to put sealer on the intake threads for the rocker. Funny story about valve. I've gone ahead and put the light checking springs in. Number one, I don't know where I got this one. This is probably, valve spring compressor is probably suitable for a lawnmower. I remember buying this one at Sears when I was a teenager. And it was fine until I got my first big camshaft with big springs, and it almost killed me. You can see where I had to weld it. Things were flying. I bought this one a long time ago, and this thing is a tool. It will do anything. It doesn't flex, doesn't hesitate, easy to use, very safe. It's a tool for every job. Okay, no joke. This isn't a setup. I was in there working, I saw a car drive away, and my buddy dropped off a filter. Funny. My adjustable pushrod checker didn't go short enough for a factory hydraulic roller cam engine, so I had to do a little nip tuck. I'm going to start it. You can read that 7200, which would be a factory roller block pushrod length. If the factory length, that'd be great. A lot of times, if this is a reground cam, they take it off the base circle, so the pushrods have to be longer to still reach in a short version. When you use your dial calipers, micrometers, and stuff like that, an old machinist told me, and I believe him, you close it all the way and you open it back up a little bit so when the temperature goes up and down, it doesn't sit there and push on itself and get out of adjustment. So out of habit, I always close them all the way and just open them up a hair, and they can sit and hopefully not be affected by that. I'm not a machinist, but I listen to old guys that chew on cigars. The pushrod length checker does not agree that it's going to take a factory one. We got a gap. So, in this situation, a lot of times with guide plates, I had to put the adjuster in upside down. No big deal, it slides in from the bottom. So at this point, I'm not going to order anything because my roller rockers are out on the FedEx truck for delivery today. So I'll install those and do a sweep over the valve, and we'll see what the pattern looks like and go from there. Because this will get you close. This will work, but it's much more effective to put the rocker around, mark the end of the tip of the valve, and roll it over a few times and see what the wear pattern looks like. So if you got to buy custom push rods, you might as well optimize the scenario. I bought Scorpion rockers, made in USA. They're 3/8 stud, 1:5 ratio. You can choose 1:6 or 1:7 ratio or anything you want. You can split 1.5, 1.6. In this, I just went plain vanilla 1.5. I used the 3/8 studs, one because the heads came with 3/8 studs, and two because I have 3 new 3/8 stud girdles, and I'm going to put one on this engine. Always a good idea with an aluminum head. This doesn't have that much left. It's about 5'10", but it certainly won't hurt anything other than you have to run a tall valve cover. So I painted the valve tip with a Sharpie marker, installed the rocker, rolled it over twice. The push rod is at the length, the 7200 that a factory roller cam block would have. And it shows that it's on the short side. It's to the left of middle of the valve. Now I'm going to adjust the push rod to the length that the plastic push rod length checker told me, and let's try that. And using the dimension that the length checker showed me to adjust the push rod to, the pattern is now dead center on the valve. I like it. So I'll need to shop and buy push rods at a 72900. So the difference was 90 thousandths. And you see what a difference it made on the valve. It would run with the other, with the shorter one, but it wouldn't be right. And with the valve train, it pays to be right. checking piston to valve clearance. In this scenario, the light checker spring won't compress the spring in the lifter. So it's essentially like having a solid lifter in there, which you'd have to check anything if you had a full-size spring up here, because it would want to compress that and your readings would not be accurate. So what's really simple on a small block is I can look right in the hole and watch the piston. It only gets close as the piston's coming up and the valve's closing there, both headed in the same direction. When it gets about 20 degrees or so, it's about as close as they get. And in this case, when it looks like it's at its closest point, I can just see how much I got. If it was anywhere near close, I would actually get out a dial indicator and measure that, but in this case I had plenty of room. And I'll repeat for the intake. You can put clay on the top of the pistons. There's several methods, but this is pretty easy when you're actually watching the events take place. Pretty simple. I should have mentioned I'm just setting this to 0 lash with my fingers. I'm not locking anything down. I'm not spinning it over that fast. With this push rod length checkup being actually too long for this job, but I'm making it work, I had to set it in there and set the head back on the engine because it wouldn't go in any other way. Not ideal, but it's workable. In a perfect world, the adjustable length push rod, the adjuster would be up here. So in the intake scenario, it's not viewable as easy anyway. You'd have to use mirrors, but the valve is chasing the piston down. You watch the exhaust close and instantly the intake. The piston chases the exhaust valve up, and now as soon as it shuts, the intake is going to open and chase the piston down to start drawing in air and fuel. So I start at top dead center and just start seeing how much clearance I have. And every 10 degrees or so, I recheck it until I'm at full lift at the valve, and which is where I'm at right now, and I got a 1/4 inch probably. No need to measure it, because if you're within 100 thousandths or so or less, you're going to be just fine. This the pistons in this engine are slightly dished, but with the 64 cc combustion chamber, I should have about 9.6 to 1 compression, if you can believe what you read. I have not figured it, and I'm not going to figure it. Should be a good street engine. So now I can remove the head, install the real springs back on the #1 cylinder, and put both heads on for good. You have to seal the threads on the head bolts because most, if not all, go into a water passage. And you don't want to be mixing oil and water. Also in the mail today was my brass-tipped push rod, because I'm adding a fuel pump. It is required with a roller cam, and I was happy to see that it's made in USA. Just a stock fuel pump from local auto parts store, and I had the plate and gasket. It had a block-off plate before. This is a good reminder to myself that I need to determine which distributor I'm going to run and measure its shaft size and order a melanized or brass gear for it. I'm going to go melanized. Probably more durable from what I understand. Also required with a steel roller cam. This video is probably getting long. That's what usually happens when you start talking about stuff. Next time you see the engine, I'll would have decided what intake it's going to get. There's a single plane behind me, which is what Chevrolet used on that engine. I love the look of a single plane. I've recently learned from watching all the dyno videos that down low where you use the power most of the time, a dual plane's a much better choice. However, you're probably going to see that intake on it. Hey, whatever. My first small block intake was one of those, very similar to it. I just like the looks of it. Bad idea to choose an intake, going by looks. Well, not really. I don't know. Depends. Thanks for watching. I'll update you next time.